The wind had carried the scent of rain long before the first drops began to fall, sweeping through the lonely stretch of land that belonged to Luke Harland, a man whose silence spoke louder than words. The ranch lay far from town, surrounded by endless plains where wildflowers grew between dry patches of earth, and the only sound most evenings was the low hum of cattle and the soft rustle of the barn doors in the wind. That's where she found him, always there, like part of the land itself. Emma stood at the gate that afternoon, her boots heavy with mud and her heart heavier still. She had sworn she would never come back after the spring incident, but fate had a way of circling back to unfinished things. Luke looked up from the post he was mending, eyes shaded beneath his hat, and for a long moment neither spoke. The air between them was thick, not with anger, but with something raw, something both had tried too long to ignore. "You shouldn't have come," he said finally, voice low and steady. She managed a faint smile. "I didn't have a choice." That was true, she hadn't. There were nights when she'd hear the echo of his voice in her dreams, or see his figure framed by the fading sun when she closed her eyes. She had tried to bury the feeling, to go on living as if that spring hadn't happened, as if he hadn't saved her life when her horse had bolted near the cliffs. Since then, she'd been trying to pay a debt that wasn't meant to be paid with words. She stepped closer, her dress catching the rain that had begun to fall in soft sheets. "I can't hold it in any more," she said suddenly, voice trembling as though the confession had been trapped too long inside her chest. Luke froze, every muscle tightening. He'd waited months for her to break that silence, but hearing it still shook him like the sound of a gunshot. "Emma," he started, but she cut him off. "You think I don't know what this looks like? You think I haven't told myself 100 times that I can't feel this way?" Her breath hitched. "But I do, Luke. I tried to fight it. I tried to keep away. But I can't anymore." Her words were soft, desperate, like rain on dry ground. Luke turned away, staring into the distance where the storm rolled over the horizon. The truth was, he'd loved her long before that spring, back when she'd first come to the ranch with her husband, Daniel, who had been his best friend. And when Daniel died in that river accident 2 years ago, Luke had promised himself he'd never let his heart betray that friendship. But love had a cruel way of testing promises. Now, standing there, hearing her break open the silence he'd lived with for years, he didn't know whether to run or reach for her. "You don't know what you're saying," he muttered, but even as he said it, his voice cracked, betraying him. Emma took another step. "Yes, I do. I know it'll ruin everything. I know it's wrong in every way, but it's the only truth I've got left." Lightning flashed across the sky, and for a moment, their faces were lit with white fire. Two souls caught between right and real. Luke's jaw tightened. "Then why now? Why after all this time?" "Because," she whispered, "I thought I could live without you. But every day I wake up and see that empty chair across from me, and it hurts less when I imagine you sitting there." The storm cracked above them, and rain came harder now, soaking through his shirt, her hair, their words. Luke hesitated, staring at the woman he'd loved and lost 100 times in silence. His hands, rough and scarred from years of work, clenched at his sides. "You should go," he said finally, voice breaking. "Go before I do something I can't take back." But she didn't move. "What if I don't want to go?" she whispered. "What if I'm tired of running?" He turned then, eyes meeting hers with the kind of pain only love can carve. For a long time, there was nothing but rain and thunder and the sound of two hearts breaking quietly in the storm. Then he did something that neither of them expected. He took off his hat, stepped closer, and placed it gently against her chest. "If you're leaving," he murmured, "take this. It's all I've got that still remembers warmth." Her breath caught. "Luke," but he stepped back before she could say more. "You think love's something you confess, Emma," he said, voice low, "but sometimes it's something you bury deep enough that it doesn't destroy the people around you." She shook her head, tears mixing with rain. "You're destroying yourself instead." His silence said she was right. When she finally turned and walked away, the wind carried her scent, and he watched her go until she was swallowed by the storm. That night, Luke didn't sleep. He sat by the fire, hatless, staring at the flames that seemed to dance with her shadow. The words she'd said echoed again and again. I can't hold it in anymore. He wanted to believe that silence was the right choice, that by letting her go, he'd kept his promise to Daniel. But deep down, he knew something had changed. A storm had broken not just over the plains, but inside him. And storms like that don't pass quietly. The rain didn't stop for 3 days, and neither did the silence inside Luke Harlan's heart. He worked the ranch like a man possessed, fixing fences, feeding horses, mending the same rope 3 times just to keep his hands busy and his mind from breaking. But every time the wind shifted, he swore he could hear her voice in it, soft, trembling, full of the words she'd left behind. On the 3rd night, as lightning flashed over the valley, he saw her again. Not in a dream this time. She was there, standing in the barn doorway, soaked to the bone, eyes wild with something that looked like fear and hope tangled together. Emma, he breathed, dropping the lantern in his hand. She stepped closer, shaking her head, tears cutting through the rain on her cheeks. I shouldn't have come, she said, but I couldn't stay away. You said you'd destroy yourself keeping this buried, and I won't let you. He stared at her, torn between joy and guilt. You think I haven't tried to forget? His voice was low, broken. Every sunrise, every sunset, I've been fighting what's already won. She reached out, her hand trembling as it touched his chest. Then stopped fighting. For a heartbeat, the storm outside seemed to quiet, like the whole world was holding its breath. Luke looked at her, really looked at her, the woman who had once belonged to his best friend, the woman whose laughter used to echo through his lonely house, the woman who had turned his guilt into love. He took her hand, rough fingers closing around hers, and for the first time since Daniel's death, he didn't pull away. You don't know what this means, he whispered, voice cracking. I do, she said softly. It means we stop pretending that love's a sin when it's the only thing keeping us alive. Her words hit him like thunder. Then he did something no one expected. Not her, not himself, not the ghosts that haunted him. He dropped to his knees in the hay, hands trembling, and prayed out loud. Not for forgiveness, but for strength, strength to love her without shame, to live without running from the truth. When he stood again, his eyes were steady, the stormlight dancing in them. If you stay, he said, you stay for good. No more secrets, no more fear. She nodded, tears streaming freely now. Then I'm home. And when he pulled her into his arms, the world outside didn't matter anymore, not the storm, not the whispers, not the past. Morning came soft and golden over the plains, the rain washed earth steaming with new life. They worked side by side that day, fixing fences, feeding cattle, building something quiet but unbreakable. The townsfolk talked, of course, they always did, but neither of them listened. Because love, once spoken in truth, doesn't ask permission to exist. Months later, when the first wildflowers bloomed again, Emma stood on the porch watching Luke saddle the horses. He looked back at her with that rare, quiet smile of his, the kind that said everything words never could. And she smiled back, knowing they'd both weathered more than a storm. They'd survived the weight of silence. Cowboy had face if you felt the storm, the love, and the courage in this story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell icon. Every click helps bring more heart-touching cowboy tales to life on this channel. Saddle up for more stories, because out here, every sunset hides another beginning. Sunrise Red Heart.